How are you impacting the earth during your time here? What is your relationship with the world? Are you prepared to show yourself? Welcome to the World Tarot Card lesson and the very last lesson within our 22-day tarot challenge. We are completing a cycle with the Fool's Journey, otherwise known as the Hero's Journey. If you happened to tune in and discover this video during this lesson, don't worry, because the complete Mystic Mondays Tarot Challenge is available on YouTube. So check out the Tarot Challenge playlist on the Mystic Mondays channel to catch up on all of the lessons. And if you tuned in for the entire Tarot Challenge, major congratulations for sticking it through. It's no easy feat, as learning the tarot cards is a reflection of life itself. So I'd love to hear how it went for you during this tarot challenge. Leave a comment, emoji, whatever makes you feel comfortable in sharing your experience with us and the Mystic Mondays community. I'd love to support you, and I'm sure the rest of us would love to support you on your tarot journey as well. In this lesson, we'll be reviewing the meaning of the World Tarot card, where we'll go over the general meaning of this card, and we'll also be doing a tarot analysis, where we'll be using 3 key factors on how to interpret any tarot card without memorizing the meanings, and ultimately empower your intuition. We are all intuitive, so think about intuition like a muscle. The more you use your intuition, the stronger it gets. This video is part of the 22-day tarot challenge, where each day of the challenge we will go over a major arcana tarot card, otherwise known as the Fool's Journey. Sign up at tarotchallenge.mysticmondays.com to get the worksheets to participate in these lessons and join our private community for this free 22-day tarot challenge. But before we get started, let me introduce myself. I'm Grace, and I'm the creator of Mystic Mondays, the artist, author, and founder behind all of the Mystic Mondays decks, the Mystic Mondays app, and all of the Mystic Mondays courses. Over the years, I've had the pleasure of teaching tarot workshops and reading tarot for hundreds of people, having collaborated with brands like Chanel, Macy's, Shopify, Urban Outfitters, and so many more, even reading tarot in the metaverse. But that's enough about me. Let's get back to this tarot lesson. Let's begin this tarot lesson with the general meaning of the World Tarot card. The keywords for this card are completion, achievement, and unity. In astrology, the world is associated with Saturn, a planet of discipline, obstacles, and boundaries. Saturn is known as the taskmaster, keeping track of time through restriction and discipline. Through the Saturnian lessons, we build perseverance, grit, and character to handle more challenges that are ahead. In numerology, the world is associated with the number 21, which breaks down to number 3, so carries similar themes to the Empress Tarot card, and all of the 3s within the suits. This carries the same energetics of collaboration, groups, and growth. Knowing the correspondences of the World card also gives us a greater understanding of the meaning of this card, as well as the overall energy of this card. If you want to access the tarot card meanings on the go, we also have the Mystic Mondays app for you to access the tarot library, and you can also draw all of the Mystic Mondays cards for the day to give you daily guidance and to be a part of your daily rituals. The World is a card of reaching a long-term goal and celebrating your achievements. It's like all of the puzzle pieces have come together and you finally reached the final stage of a certain chapter in your life. This is also a time to be proud of yourself, to look at everything you've done and continue to forge your path forward. Through trials and triumphs, you've learned so much about yourself and what you're capable of. This could look like life events like graduations, being promoted, moving, where a certain part of your life is ending for another chapter of your life to begin. With endings come new beginnings. The world could also literally mean you're traveling and will experience a new world wherever you decide to adventure, setting you up perfectly to start again with the Fool card. The world can quite literally mean the world is your oyster. So that's it for the general meaning of the World Tarot card. Let's move into the next chapter of this lesson, the Tarot Analysis. So for this portion of the lesson, we are going to look at 3 different cards from 3 different decks. The Rider Waite Tarot, the Mystic Mondays Tarot, which is my deck that I created as both the artist and author, and the Dali deck, which is one of my favorite decks and is by the artist Salvador Dali. I'll have to throw up a photo of me at the Dali Museum. I actually got a chance to visit the museum, which is in Figueres, Spain. It's like, I think a couple hours away from Barcelona. So if you ever get a chance to go to Barcelona and want to take like a day trip, I would highly recommend the museum. I had a good time. And before we get started, a quick shout out to my podcast, The Graced Podcast, where I interview artists, authors, other deck creators, and more spiritual wellness experts. For the World podcast episode, which is not yet released, so make sure to tune into the podcast to see who the next guest is for us to talk about themes of the World Tarot card. But if you want to catch up on episodes that are out right now, and who knows, by the time you watch this, it could be the World Tarot card episode could be out anyway, but definitely check out other episodes. We highlight really great guests and deck creators with all various backgrounds, so make sure to tune in wherever you watch and listen to podcasts, but especially on the Grace Wong channel, which is where I post the podcast. Okay, let's get into the tarot analysis, where we'll be looking at 3 key factors to interpret these tarot cards: color, symbolism, and personal experience. Let's look at color. So I feel like color communicates so much just through the way color is used. I feel like color is a really great way to intuitively understand a message without necessarily knowing what the meaning is. I'm a huge color nerd, so I basically see color and I basically notice color first when it comes to anything. So we've got the color swatches here next to each card, just to give us a frame. I feel like that's a really simple way to look at what colors are being used, what that could immediately communicate. With the Rider Waite, typically, I think that there are a bit more toned down colors, probably colors that were popular of the time of its making. I think that also communicates a more serious tone, but we have like this green wreath here. We have this banner here. We'll have this figure censored here for YouTube, but won't be censored in the course portal. Just so you know, it is all art. I appreciate art, so we're not going to censor that within the portal. And we also have, because typically in some of the other cards, yellow is so bright in the other cards, but we have a very toned down yellow in the corners. We have a red banner wrapping the wreath, and brown and orange for like the different animals that are present here. We also have these gray clouds, and this looks like a different blue, doesn't it, than what is in the other cards. So like, let's say the background of the star card, for example, it's a lighter blue. It almost feels more archival for whatever reason because of these different colors that are being used. And then in the Mystic Mondays Tarot, I am using a lot of blues, greens, and purples, but more so purples that are lighter in tone. So it can feel a little bit more playful than a darker purple, for example. But for me, I think about the completion of a cycle. Green to me indicates like growth, fertility, also can relate to nature's earth itself. You know, when we zoom out and we look at planet Earth, it's mostly blue and green, and that's how we usually depict it when we're drawing it and things like that. So I wanted to tie those colors back into what we typically think of with the world. And then the world card in the Dali deck, my Dali deck is so beaten up because I have one that I use for everyday use, which is like probably not a good idea because this deck is kind of expensive. But I actually have a Dali deck like right next to me on my desk that I use. The Dali deck, obviously, because Dali is a surrealism artist, a lot of his work is abstract. A lot of the meaning here is very untraditional to a lot of the world tarot cards that you might see. Anyway, So I have a Dali deck that I also use for everyday use, which maybe is not like the greatest idea because it is a more collector's type of item deck, so a bit more expensive than your typical tarot deck. Don't know if you can see this, but it's very like worn down because of how much I use it. But I love this deck. I have this deck. And then this version of the deck that I scanned in, I have two versions of this deck, one for the collector's item edition and then one I happen to use. I suppose in some ways it's symbolic that I'm even using this deck to show you for the World Tarot card because I personally use this deck a lot. And what I really like about this deck is that it's not the typical tarot imagery that you would see within the tarot card because a lot of the tarot decks that are out there are based on the Rider Waite. We'll get more into that with symbolism, but in the Dali deck and specifically in this card, I feel like there are a lot of earthy tones. Kind of reminds me of the root chakra because of all the reds that we see here, grounding oneself. And there's a little bit of green here. There's also like flesh tones because of these figures here. And this just doesn't look like a typical world card, but we'll get into that more in symbolism because we have this like big face here too. Like, what is that? Okay, so let's move on to symbolism. In this card, the central figure is this woman carrying the two batons, wearing a banner. This typically indicates like the completion of a journey. The central figure in the Mystic Mondays Tarot happens to be this like Adam type illustration that I did. One of my favorite sayings is as above, so below. And I do feel like there's a world within you. There's a world within your inside, in your emotional landscape, your inner landscape, so to speak. So the world at large is also a part of a galaxy and so on and so forth. And that's what this reminds me of. You know, that we are all a part of a vastness encapsulated in different environments. So that's this circle here encapsulating this atom type figure. I also feel like with the world, and especially with this symbol, there is a sense of oneness. So even though there's so many different cultures and different diversities present here on Earth, different living beings, even if we want to extend it out, like we're all inhabitants of planet Earth, you know? So whether you're a cat, a dog, a human, a plankton, a squid, or whatever, we are all inhabitants of Earth and we all work off each other's energy and we all have ecosystems that we work with or are a part of. And then let's move into the symbolism for the world card in the Dali deck because we have this face here and he feels like the central figure, but then we also have these three figures and they're supposed to represent the three graces. The three graces are faith, love, and hope. And if you look really closely, they're also wearing chains, and the idea is that they're supposed to bring this creature out of the dark into the world. There's a sort of emergence happening, and I think that's kind of like a theme of the world card in general, that you're presenting yourself to the world, you know, like certain ceremonies like graduation or weddings or, you know, certain rituals of life, you know, you're presenting yourself to the world in some way, especially after a milestone or accomplishment like a graduation, for example. In the Rider Waite, we have the wreath here. So this typically indicates some sort of victory, some sort of cycle ending with a new cycle beginning. And also the world is the last card in the major arcana and is number 21, which we can see here in all of the cards. And 21 numerology wise breaks down into 3, so 2 plus 1 equals 3, so it has a lot of similar themes to the Empress card, where we can see fertility, growth, creativity. Also groups, I associate 3 with community, connecting to community. Balance and duality is such a huge theme in the tarot deck, so we have these 2 batons here that the figure is holding, representing those 2 aspects of oneself, or, you know, the 2 aspects that we might be balancing. So it could be like conscious and subconscious, or physical and spiritual, or male and female, you know, the things that tend to be yin and yang in how we relate to certain things. In each corner of the card, we have a figure shrouded by clouds. We've got the lion here in the bottom right. We have the bull here on the bottom left. We have the eagle here on the top right. And we have a man or an angel, depending on how you're looking at that, on the top left. Similar to the Wheel of Fortune, they also represent those zodiac signs. So we have Aquarius for the angel, we have Leo for the lion, we have Taurus for the bull, and then we have Scorpio for the eagle. They also represent the 4 elements: fire, air, earth, and water. And I think the world card can also speak to mastering all of these different elements to come to a place of completion. So with the Magician card, which is number 1 in the major arcana, you might be just learning, experimenting with these different elements that are present through the suits. So cups, pentacles, swords, wands, which represents the 4 elements. And then here they're represented by the 4 figures. And then with the clouds, they feel like they're clouds in motion. So it does feel like you're being ushered into a new chapter of life, or at least that you're moving forward. And even the way the figure is standing in the sky, one foot is stepping forward. So there is a sense of moving on. And then the Mystic Mondays Tarot, I chose not to put set figures within the card because I really feel like sometimes it's more so about the inner completion, meaning like the quiet moments that one might feel like you completed something, or you might feel a shift inside, but it doesn't always reflect externally yet. So that's kind of what this card reminds me of, paying attention to what's going internally within the external world, which is here. And then I always feel like whatever happens internally tends to, reflect outward anyway. So it goes out, and it's a very symmetrical card. Actually, now that I'm looking at this, the world card is pretty symmetrical too, with the figure here in the center. We've got the wreath in all 4 parts of the card, and then we have the 4 figures in all 4 parts of the card too. So I think imagery wise, it really looks like very similar to the Wheel of Fortune. And then in the Mystic Mondays Tarot, this is a very symmetrical card as well. And in the Dali deck, it is not a symmetrical card because this doesn't really have a similar meaning to the World card in general, but there are different elements and aspects of different cards present here. As I was reading through the description in the guidebook that they provide, there's elements of like the devil present here, there's elements of the chariot. And I suppose when you come to a completion, you do have a little bit of everything at the end. And in general, this card doesn't really depict the same kind of like completion energy, but I think it more so speaks to more of like the evolution of humanity, and that we're all inhabitants of the earth. So there is a practical advice section that I'm going to read because I feel like that this does relate to what the world card means. It is your task and your strength to step forward and show yourself. The way you live in this world determines what the world is in a reciprocal relationship. Use your time on earth wisely and enjoy your stay here. The world card is associated with the number 21, which is related to number 3 because 2 + 1 = 3 in numerology, and that relates to themes of the Empress card. So we can see a lot of creativity, fertility, growth. I also think about communities with the number 3, also sharing experiences with others and being a part of the collective. So I kind of feel like that really speaks to the impermanence of your life. And I almost feel like this is more so about the evolution of humanity than it is about like you personally completing something. I feel like this has some sort of social commentary attached to this card. But I suppose if you like to think about it that way, how are you impacting the earth during your time here? What is your relationship with the world? Are you prepared to show yourself? So let's move into personal experience. And I usually tell a contemplation about my life here in some way about my own experiences, because I do feel like when you draw your own experiences to the cards, you then better remember the cards. Because I kind of feel like when I was forced to memorize stuff in school, I literally don't remember any of it because I wasn't tying it to something personal in my own life or making that information useful for my everyday life. So the world card to me reminds me of celebrations and graduations, and more specifically, I can think of my college graduation because that was a big turning point for me. And I'll throw up a picture of me during my college graduation. So that's me with my parents. And I'm a young adult at that time. I'm 22 or 23. I have just graduated. All of my life till that point, I've just been in school like most people, because you go through high school and then, we're told to go to college. So we go to college and we complete our 4-year degree. So I was coming out of, a lifetime of just being in school. And I'm about to embark on a completely new journey, because up until that point, I had pretty much lived in Philadelphia for most of my life. I was born in New York, but we moved when I was 3 to Philadelphia, so I don't really remember too much of my time in New York in my early years. And then I had my internship in New York, and that created this desire to want to go somewhere else that I had never been before, which at that time I was like, I'm going to move to LA. And I mentioned that story in the Magician Tarot card, how I manifested my first job in Los Angeles, even though I had never been there. So at this point, when I just graduated, I had really only been around my family, because most of my family on my mom's side lives in Philadelphia. So basically everyone I grew up with. So I only really have those worldviews. I didn't really form my own sense of identity yet, because I hadn't really had my own experiences on my own yet. Up until I moved out, I really consider my adult years moving out to Los Angeles and really informing me and my adult self, because then I was really able to experience things on my own, form my own opinions, form my own worldviews, have my own experiences, etc. And I mention this because there are big milestones in our lives where we do come to a point of completion where you can see a clear change from who you once were to who you are becoming. My years in LA really informed me. I feel like because of the environment of LA as well, like I don't know if I would have created Mystic Mondays if I didn't live in LA, just because tarot and spirituality and all of that is very much accepted in LA and everywhere. I also want to point out, because maybe you can relate to this, I didn't get a job offer until maybe a month after I graduated. And I remember feeling like a failure. I remember feeling like, wow, I worked so hard. I got this degree. Like, where is my job offer? And I was getting impatient because I was comparing myself to one of my really good friends at the time. We both went to college together, did the same program, and she pretty much got a job right away after she graduated in Philadelphia. And I knew that I didn't want to stay in Philadelphia, but I was still like, oh my God, like it's not happening. And I was getting so much anxiety about not getting a job offer. And so I want to mention that because it's not always like you complete a cycle and it's happy all the time, like sometimes you can have those dual feelings of feeling like a failure while also just completing a success, because graduating is a mark of success. You completed something, and not just any old thing. You completed like 4 years of schooling, which is a long time, but you can still graduate and still feel like a failure, especially if maybe the promise of school and a certificate didn't necessarily lead to what you thought it would be. So I think those are complicated feelings. I think that what tarot is really good at is bringing that out to the surface of being able to hold both the feeling of success and failure at the same time. And also, it did change. I did eventually get a job offer, but I do remember that month of just being like, wow, nothing's happening. Am I ever going to get a job? That kind of thing. So what about you? What moments are coming up for you when you think about the World card? Are there certain memories that are coming up? Feel free to share in the comments and within our private community, and also download our worksheets to help you with these prompts during our 22-day tarot challenge, which today is the last day. All right, that is it for the World Tarot card lesson. If you liked this episode, remember to like, subscribe, and comment so that more tarot learners can find us and join us on the Fool's Journey. If you want to dive deeper with this card, you can listen to the World Meditation, which is available on our YouTube channel, the Mystic Mondays YouTube, with full extended meditations inside our Coven membership portal. And just so you know, each tarot card also has its own collection where you can shop your favorite tarot cards on the Mystic Mondays site. So if you are feeling super connected to the card, we do have world merch on the Mystic Mondays website for you to shop right now, like the shirt that I'm wearing. And if you use code WORLD, you can get 10% off any item in the World collection. Thanks for being here, sending you so much magic today and every day. Congratulations on completing the Fool's Journey. You can rewatch this series at any time.